the epic and brutal at times history of the English language.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what we're going to unpack for you today in this deep dive, right? How this language we're speaking right now has been molded by centuries of conflict and some huge cultural shifts.
Right.
So our goal is to really extract the most compelling insights from this incredible journey, those surprising facts and connections that might just shift how you think about like the words you use every single day.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's dive right into the beginning.
Okay, so the story begins in Britain after the Roman Empire kind of fell apart, around the mid-5th century. So imagine a power vacuum, right? Nobody's in charge.
Yeah.
And into that void, in 449 AD, these guys show up, the Saxons. This is a really, really pivotal moment.
Wow.
Picture, vulnerable land, and then these Germanic tribes arrive. But here's the thing, not as like settlers seeking peaceful coexistence. No, they come as warriors, like carving out territory.
And so this wasn't exactly a welcome wagon situation, right?
Oh, no, no, no.
Like these were kingdoms being established by force, by figures with names that sound like straight out of legend,
Yeah.
Ethelred, the kind of names you read about in Beowulf.
Right.
It paints a picture of a really intense takeover.
It was.
So what happened to the people who were already there? The Celts, they had their own languages, didn't they?
Yeah. So basically, they were pushed to the edges geographically of Britain, places like Wales, Cornwall, and Scotland. And their languages, the Celtic languages, they almost disappeared, like near extinction in the face of this, this new dominant language, Old English. And it's a really stark illustration of how invasion and conquest can just completely change culture.
Yeah.
And language is such a fundamental part of that cultural identity.
It is. It really is. So this Old English that emerged, what was it actually like? The sources describe it as a raw, guttural tongue. What does that even sound like to, our modern ears?
Well, think of it as sounding quite different from modern English.
Okay.
With different vowel sounds and grammatical structures that, might sound quite foreign to us today.
Yeah.
And yeah, raw and guttural. That's a good way to put it. Imagine sounds produced further back in the throat and maybe a less melodic rhythm to the speech than we're used to.
Oh.
It was a language very much focused on survival, reflecting the harsh realities of the time.
Sure.
Just think about some of the words that were important.
Well,
Words relating to warfare were paramount. Words like sword, that was sword, shield, seal, and of course, blood, blood.
wow.
It really gives you a sense of what they were worried about day to day. Right.
A world where conflict was just a constant thing.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how even the most basic concepts in any language often have these really deep, sometimes violent origins.
Absolutely. It's like the very building blocks of the language were forged in battle,
Yeah.
But just when you think this new linguistic landscape might, settle down a bit, here come the Vikings.
Oh.
793 AD, Lindisfarne.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about raiding and taking things, was it?
No.
The source material calls it a language heist, which is such a vivid way to put it.
It is, because their impact on the English language was huge.
Yeah.
The Danes, or Norsemen, who did these raids and, later even settled down in some places, they brought with them their own language, Old Norse. What's really interesting here is how similar Old English and Old Norse were.
Oh, okay.
Because both languages came from the same Germanic ancestor, they were close enough that they actually mixed.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't just a case of one completely foreign language taking over. Oh, I see. So what kind of linguistic loot did they carry off with them, or rather, I guess, leave behind for the English?
Well, we get some really basic words from them, like sky. That's from the Old Norse ski.
Huh. Okay.
Think about that for a second. Something as basic as the sky wasn't an English word originally.
Wow. Yeah.
We also get anger, and even law, lagu. And it shows how contact, even when it's violent conflict, can actually lead to language evolving in really interesting ways, different cultures enriching each other's vocabulary.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just adding new words.
Okay.
Sometimes, like, the way people said things or even the order of words in a sentence might have been subtly changed because of this contact over time. It was a real linguistic fusion in certain areas.
Yeah, it's almost like these languages were, related but distinct dialects, having it like a really intense family feud.
Right.
And then afterwards, they started sharing their favorite phrases.
Exactly.
But then everything changes again, really dramatically, in 1066, the Battle of Hastings. This feels like Like a turning point, a game changer, right?
It really is. I mean, William the Conqueror wins, and that starts a whole new era where French becomes like the language of power, you know? The language of the ruling class. You
Wow.
can imagine this immediate, like, pervasive shift in what language is prestigious and influential.
So for almost 300 years, French is at the top in England,
Right.
in law, government, culture.
Everything.
So you've got these Norman lords speaking French, conducting all their business in it, while the everyday English folks, what language were they speaking in their, like, homes and villages?
Well, Old English was still around, but it was kind of pushed down to the lower levels of society.
I see.
You know, think about a classic example. The word beef comes from the French boeuf, the meat probably enjoyed by the Norman aristocracy.
Right, yeah.
But the animal itself, the cow that stayed coo in Old English, you know, the one that the English peasants were taking care of, it really shows you that social and linguistic hierarchy that developed.
Yeah.
The English language was, in the words of one source, crushed. Its status really went down.
Wow.
So that means things like legal documents, they'd be in French.
Wow.
Kids in noble families, they'd learn French first. And English would have been seen as, like, less refined, a less prestigious language.
But it didn't completely disappear, right?
Right.
It was hiding in the shadows, the source material says.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful image.
It is.
It speaks to the incredible resilience of language,
Mm.
that even under so much pressure, it can survive and keep changing among, like, everyday people.
Exactly. And this period of being a kind of like lower status language, while it seemed like a setback, actually it set the stage for this amazing transformation later on.
Okay.
The English that eventually came back was different.
Yep.
It had absorbed a lot of French vocabulary, particularly in areas of law, government, and food, actually.
Okay, so now we jump forward a few centuries
Mhm.
to the 1500s and 1600s, and English isn't hiding anymore.
Right.
Here comes Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing to think of him not just as this literary giant,
Yeah.
but also as a linguistic revolutionary,
Mm.
someone who wasn't afraid to make up words.
He really was. The source material actually frames his work as an act of linguistic rebellion.
Wow.
And in a way, it was, because at that time, Latin and French were still like the languages of the educated elite.
Right.
But Shakespeare really went for English, showing how expressive it could be and its capacity for like nuance and beauty. He wasn't afraid to just invent new words if they fit what he wanted to do.
Give us some examples of these rebellious new words that he came up
Mhm.
with and that we use all the time today.
Well, we get incredibly common words like eyeball, gossip, and even swagger. These weren't just random additions. They filled gaps in the language, adding layers of meaning and energy.
Yeah.
This period really shows English showing off what it can do, transforming from this language that had been pushed aside into a dynamic, creative force, a weapon, as the source material puts it. It's amazing to think that words we use all the time today were once brand new, made up by this one guy.
And it wasn't just Shakespeare changing things on his own, was it?
No.
The King James Bible, around the same time, also had a huge impact on how important English was and how far it spread.
Oh, absolutely. Translating the Bible into English made it accessible to way more people than ever before.
Right.
And it raised its status. It wasn't just the language of everyday conversation anymore.
So-
It became a language of authority, of like spiritual significance. It became deeply embedded in the culture and religion of England.
So you've got these two really powerful forces at work at the same time.
Yeah.
Shakespeare in the regular world pushing the limits of creative expression,
Uh-huh.
and the King James Bible in the religious sphere giving English gravitas and making it widely known.
Yeah.
Okay, so from this island nation, you have this language that's already been shaped by so much conflict and cultural exchange,
Right.
and it starts to spread across the globe with the rise of the British Empire.
Yeah.
It's described as spreading like a virus, which is a really powerful and maybe a little unsettling image.
It is, and it really speaks to the sheer scale and oftentimes forceful nature of the British Empire's reach.
Yeah.
Through colonization, trade, military dominance, English took root in huge areas: India, large parts of Africa, North America, Australia.
Wow.
And, you know, it wasn't always peaceful or voluntary. It
Uh-huh.
was often a direct result of political and military power.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, English became the same thing as power on a global scale.
Right.
And this had these huge and lasting effects on languages in those colonized regions, leading to the development of creoles, pidgins, and just adding English loanwords into local languages.
And that brings us to the modern era. It's not just empires anymore, is it?
No.
Now we've got American popular culture, especially Hollywood and, of course, the internet.
Right.
And suddenly we're talking about an estimated 1.5 billion English speakers worldwide.
That's incredible.
That's just a mind-blowing number.
It really is. The global reach of American popular culture, especially through film, television, and music, has, without a doubt, increased the presence of English worldwide.
Yeah,
And the internet, as like the main way we communicate and share information globally, has made it the lingua franca of the digital age.
right.
The sources you shared point out its current status as the main language of science, international business, even warfare.
Yeah.
And definitely internet culture, just think about the sheer volume of memes and online stuff that's created and shared in English.
Yeah.
It's become this incredibly versatile and dominant force in so many different parts of modern life.
So we've gone from a raw, guttural tongue spoken by a relatively small group of people on a small island to this global, behemoth shaped by invasion after invasion, conquest, and cultural exchange.
It really is amazing.
It's an amazing story, and that brings us to the thought-provoking questions at the end of the Materials.
Mm.
Will English keep going strong forever?
Yeah.
Or will things like artificial intelligence, the constant changes in slang, and new world powers maybe change its path?
These are really important questions to think about. Language is alive. It's constantly changing and adapting.
Yeah.
The forces shaping it today are definitely not the same as Viking raids or the Norman conquest, but they are just as powerful.
Right.
The increasing sophistication of AI and how we interact with it using language,
Yeah.
the fast and unpredictable evolution of slang and online communication, and changes in global political and economic influence.
Right.
All of these things could reshape the English language in ways we can only, start to imagine.
It really makes you think about the power of language itself, this tool we use every day without really thinking about its epic and often chaotic history.
Yeah.
And on that note, the source material ends with these really powerful lines.
Yeah, it does.
Go for it.
It says, so the next time you say hello, remember, that word has survived 1,500 years of war, and it's only just getting started.
And then it follows that up with this powerful kind of unified declaration.
History isn't written by the weak. It's spoken by the victors.
Wow, powerful stuff.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about this incredible journey the English language has been on
It does.
and what it means for how we communicate now and what the future of language might be. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. It's a story that is still being written.
That's for sure.